In this video, we're going to show you the basics of designing a crown in Clinux using the database function, which has been released with version 1.2, and that's what we're looking at here. So this is the new dashboard. I just load my case by clicking on it, and it comes into Clinux, and here's our case here. So we have a crown on the lower first molar on the left side, and yeah, looks like an endo case. No build-up or anything, so we're just going to put a crown right on top of that. And before I get started, I always turn on the antagonist just to get an overview of, the situation, the design situation. Looks like we've got lots of space here. No big issues there. Actually, pretty straightforward case. We have two proximal contact surfaces. The margin you see here has already been drawn in the Medit software, and when you bring that into Clinux, we see that margin and we just bring it into the model as you drew it in Medit. And so now we're at the insertion axis step, and you want to confirm or edit your insertion axis, and this is really the path of draw for the crown. And there's a little note here at the bottom: please ensure the mesial points to the right. Right now the distal is pointing to the right, so we have to turn that around. So you can do this by rotating the model yourself, like I'm doing here, or you click on this little mesio-distal axis button over here. So this is our starting position here with the distal on the right. Now we want the mesial on the right. You click that button, and Clinux rotates that whole model 180 degrees for you. So now I'm looking at the proximal embrasures to make sure that I can see both of them, the mesial and the distal, as well as optimizing my path of draw to eliminate undercuts, which we're showing there in those little yellow spots, those little yellow lines you see in the model. Those are the undercuts. You want to minimize those. And when you've got your positioning, click on Next, and that fixes the insertion axis for the rest of the design. So with Clinux in the database mode, what we do is we give you a database crown. We basically just position it there over your margin in the model. It usually takes a little bit of positioning and rotating to make it optimal. But be sure to check also the different database options. Today we have 2 in the software. We're going to be adding more here in the next little bit. Certainly we'll have 5 databases before long. And so do check the other options, because many times they just fit better. I'm taking this one because the cusp tips were more similar to the cusp tips in the rest of the model. And now I'm just positioning and rotating and scaling this crown to fit into this space a little better than what we saw a bit earlier. So I've scaled it down a little bit, and we also want to move and position that, basically correct. It doesn't have to be perfect. You see I've got heavy contacts here on the occlusion. I'm not too worried about that at this point. I just want to make sure the crown is fitting into the occlusion in the most optimal way. And you see that just by sliding now to the buckle, I'm clearing up some space. And there we turn on the antagonist, and we can see why. And you can even keep this view and move your crown around, and you can see the effect that it's having by making these movements. So something like this, where I've basically minimized the occlusal interferences. Here I don't want to rotate around the axis, but rather a bit tipping to the distal. And I'm really looking now at this point at matching up my marginal ridges as closely as I can, both mesially and distally. And now I'm really close. And I just have this heavy contact on the distal. I think I can work that out in the tools pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Next. And what Clinux does is we just basically take your occlusal table that you've designed, and we connect that to the margin now. So here is the crown, and at this step, the CAD assistant is telling me adjust the first contact. So this is the first proximal contact. Here I just smooth away the yellow. I like to have a green contact. I find that I don't need more than that. So I'm adjusting the tool radius of the smooth tool. I can do that with the slider on the right, or I can do it with my mouse wheel. Either way, you can adjust the size of that slider. I click on next and it takes me to the distal contact. I do the same thing here, just cleaning out the yellow. Don't worry about these little red spots that you see there. It's a small bug in our software. We're going to have that fixed before too long. You don't need to worry too much about that. So now I'm really, really close. I just have this heavy contact still on that lingual distal cusp area, and that's because of the antagonist, right? So that's just the shape of the antagonist and the shape of this current database crown, which I can alter now with the tool. So I have different options here. I can use the form tool to add or subtract. I can take the circular tool. This basically takes a big section of the tooth, and you can see here it's based on that tool size that I've got there. So I can move that cusp around and also drop down this marginal ridge like so, and thereby reducing these contacts. But I don't really like how that lingual distal cusp has developed here because of these circular shape tool movements that I've made. That's looking kind of artificial now. I don't really like that at all. So what can you do? Well, you can click on undo, and you can go step by step, back, 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 until you get to where you started. And so that's what I've done here. So I'm going to take another shot at this, and I'm going to use the tool maybe from a different angle than what I used it last time. The angle that you use these tools actually makes a difference, and so you'll find that it becomes intuitive after a time, but you'll find that you get a feeling for when you can use this or that tool and to what intensity and all that kind of thing. So here I like this far better. We're preserving the shape of that cusp and still reducing our contacts and maintaining our marginal ridge. I like this a lot. Now I have very small reductions to make. I take the form, subtract, and now I'm just making a couple of clicks and taking down the heavy parts of those contacts. So now I would say the occlusion is looking pretty good, and only this marginal ridge here in the mesial is disturbing me a little bit. It's not quite at the same level as the neighbor, so I'm going to drag that up with the circular shape tool, like so. Now, of course, when I do that, you're going to have to double check that you don't change the proximal contact. So I'm going to take down the preparation opacity so I can see that, and yes, I can see that now I have red in that proximal contact. So I'm going to smooth that out with my smooth tool there. Take a look from the side, make sure it still looks okay. That's looking much better. The marginal ridges are lined up there, both on the mesial and the distal. I've got my occlusal contacts. Proximal contacts are set. This crown is looking pretty good at this point. At this stage, you could either export the file, because the adjustments I'm making now, probably with your handpiece, go even faster. So you always have to keep these things in mind. How much time do you want to spend in the CAD software? How much time you're going to spend finishing and working on the crown and the mouth. So here, I've turned on our minimal thickness guide, like so, and that guide is set in your preferences and parameters, so you can tell Clinux how much of that guide you want to see. And when, for example, the crown is too thin, you'll see that minimal thickness guide is blue, and it will peek out from the crown like it is here on the cervical margin. But this is okay from this point, and I've exported the case, and that's it. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.